What's up, y'all? So today we're going to mix a little demo track in Cubase using only stock plugins. This was actually my buddy Tanner's idea. He hit me up a while back and was like, yo, dude, you should do mixes in a couple different DAWs and use only stock plugins. It'd be a cool little experiment. Thought it was a great idea. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to play this for you here and let you kind of hear what we've got going on. All right, so that's kind of the general idea, just super like knuckle dragging, like heavy. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my mix console. We're going to talk about the routing. So I like to mix into a bus compressor with a little bit of EQ and then a limiter at the very end. I used all stock plugins for this, but we're going to talk about this routing first. So everything comes to these four buses. There's the drum bus, there's the bass bus, there's the guitar bus, there's the post-production bus, and then these buses feed the mix bus. So all of these tracks below here, everything feeds one of these four buses. Anything drum related goes to drums. Anything bass related goes to bass. Anything guitar related goes to guitar. Any of the post-production goes to the post-production bus. If this is something that has vocals, the vocals will have their own bus. If this is something that has like synths, keys, orchestration, that will all have its own bus. I'll call that like a synth bus or keys bus or orchestral bus, something like that. Just all that stuff gets going to the same place. And then the post-production will always have its own bus as well. So everything from here goes to the mix bus, and then we'll go down now. So now that you've kind of got an idea of like the signal flow, like where everything ends up, we're going to start with the mix bus settings here. So I'm going to click on this little E. This is going to show me everything that I've got going on here, which I didn't use this EQ here. What I did, I've got this tube compressor. I've got the studio EQ, and I've got the brick wall limiter. Just gonna make sure, hopefully my face is not blocking any of these. This is my mix bus chain. I'm gonna play this, and I'm gonna bypass all this, and I'll bring it back in one at a time, and let you kind of get a feel for what each piece does. On this bus compressor, I basically set this up. I normally will use an SSL style bus comp. With the attack is about 30 milliseconds. The release is about 10 milliseconds. And then I'll set that up so it's doing about 3 to 4 decibels of gain reduction on really hard snare hits. There's a side chain high pass filter. So what that is, this is filtering everything below 197 hertz out of the signal that is being detected by the compressor. It's not filtered out of the mix, but anything below that point is not triggering the compressor. So then I'll go on to the mix bus EQ here, which this is just pretty simple, just high and low shelf. Then lastly, the brick wall limiter. This is more just to stop it from clipping the main outputs than anything like this. So it's just the threshold is set at negative 0.1 dB just to keep the main outs from clipping. That's all that does. All right, so we will start with the drums. I'm going to pull this back here. Then I'm going to solo out our drum bus. And so on the drum bus, this is a compressor. I didn't dial this in until after I'd mixed the rest of the drums. I'll usually use some compression on my drum bus, but it's always, I don't add that compression in until I have the bass and the guitar going. That's when I will compress the drum bus just to give it a little extra squeeze. So we'll start here, and I'm going to explain how I route the drum bus, right? Because there's some more subgrouping down this way. I've got the kick close mic, and then there is a kick one shot and a kick trigger. All of these tracks feed this kick sum track. Then the kick sum track will feed the drum bus. Same story on the snare. There is the snare close mic, there's a snare one shot, and there's a snare trigger. These all feed the snare sum. You can actually see the outputs here in this section of the channel strip on Cubase. So you can see that all these kick tracks are feeding kick sum, then kick sum is feeding drum bus. All these are feeding snare sum. Snare sum is feeding drum bus. I do send my toms all to a tom bus. So you can see these all go to the tom sum. Tom sum then feeds the drum bus. Then I've got cymbal sum, which feeds the drum bus. That's just the cymbal track. And then there are a few different room mic tracks. There's room close, there's shell ambience, there's room mono, where cymbal sum feeds directly to the drum bus. These will all feed the drum ambience track, which will then feed the drum bus. And then here on our channel strip, you can see that we have sends. So what these sends are is these are for parallel processing. So you can see that I've got all these routed to a track called Drum Murder. This is getting essentially the output of a duplicate of this track. So this Drum Murder is also being fed the same signal that's being fed to the drum bus. What I do here is just very extreme compression, and you can see a lot of saturation, but we'll cross that bridge here in a second. But that's what the Drum Murder is parallel drum compression that then also feeds the drum bus. So all the drum stuff is going to the drum bus. So we're going to start here with our drum bus soloed. And I'll go ahead and I will just bypass that compressor because we'll take a look at that after we take a look at what's going on here. So for the most part, I won't really process the close mic tracks, the one shot and the trigger tracks on their own, unless I need to use noise gates. That's something that happens especially with live drums where there's a lot of bleed. You'll have to gate. Typically I will hit these with processing where they're summed at the kick sum. So this is essentially my kick track where all my processing takes place. All right, so let's take a look at the processing that I've got on the kick drum. So I've got the EQ, there's a compressor here, there's a tube saturation. So here's what I've got going on the EQ. Boosting some lows, cutting some funk out of the mids here. There's a high mid boost, and then there's a high shelf. And then I can move on to the compressor, which I always use an SSL channel strip for drums. So I configured this compressor essentially like the SSL channel strip plugin is. Those compressors have an attack time of about 30 milliseconds. And I usually roll with the quickest release, like a ratio of about 3.5 to 1. For drum close mics in general, like this, I use similar compression settings on kick, snare, and toms. So without the compressor, with the compressor. See, you can see here on the gain reduction meter, it's not doing much. It'll more so engage on like quicker double kick stuff, just kind of evens out the dynamics a little bit. I don't really want to do a whole lot here because I'm going to totally destroy a compressor with these in parallel. And then a little bit of tube saturation. Not much there, just to add a little bit of weight. And then here, what this is on this insert, this is in Cubase, you've got like the channel strip section, and then you have inserts, which is where you would add other plugins. This is a Cubase stock EQ here. What I've got going on here, just I cut a little bit here where I'd boosted on the bass. Got a boost here in the low end, just to give it some more beef. Scooped out some ugly stuff in the mids. Upper mid boost, high shelf, and you'll see like in drums, with drums, you know, typically you're boosting some low end, you're cutting some ugly stuff out of the mids, you're boosting some upper mids and some high end. Without this EQ, with this EQ. All right, so that's our kick. Let's hop over to the snare. So on the channel strip here, here's our EQ setting. Again, big low end boost, little low cut here, little mid scoop, and some boosts up top here without the EQ. Oh. With the EQ. Compressor, same story as the kick. Maybe a little more gain reduction on the snare. And then some tape saturation with this little magneto guy. It's not really doing a ton with the saturation plugins on the kick or the snare. And then here lastly, another EQ. You can see similar story to what I've got going on the kick. Yeah, so basically what I did here, kind of a little more in the thought process on this, is I normally, my drum strip is a console saturation simulator from Slate Digital. Then I use a Waves SSL channel strip, which has an EQ and a compressor, and it's also got a little saturation funk that it does if you want it to. And then I'll use a more surgical EQ last in the chain. When I'm doing mixes, like, you know, full mixes, using all my third-party stuff, a lot of times I'll also use a clipper on kick, snare, and toms, and drums in general. I like to run clippers on. Didn't use one here. So now we'll hop back to the beginning because there is some tom stuff going on, and I want to show you how I process the toms. Little more intense compression on the toms, as you can see here. You can see the gain reduction meter bouncing a bit more, and then EQ, really big top boost here on the toms, really big kind of low end boost and the mid scoop. Let me jump back here. So yeah, similar kind of stuff on the toms. There's another cut here around somewhere between 800 hertz and 1K. A lot of times on toms, there's some wacky stuff there that you kind of got to pull out. So did that there. And let me get my mix console back up. All right, so we'll hop over to the cymbal sum track. A little bit more going on here. EQ, cut here in the upper mids. This is just some harsh frequencies. That's what I'm pulling out. Then high shelf, so I'll take that out. Then I'll move over to my channel strip, where you can see I've got this vintage compressor. This is like an 1176 style compressor, which the SSL channel strip from Waves that I use, that's the CLA Mix Hub. You can switch between the SSL style channel compressor or an 1176 style compressor. So I went here. That's what I grabbed for on cymbals, cymbals and room mics. So I kind of took the same approach here. Kind of will compress these a bit harder. Big difference. The 1176, it saturates a little bit when you slam it, and that's kind of desirable, which is part of the reason I'm pushing that so hard. And then tube saturation. Pushed kind of hard on this one as well. I thought it really kind of added some body and some weight. And then a maximizer here just to kind of level everything out. And then lastly, another instance of this frequency, which I'm cutting out some highs and just some ugly, harsh frequencies. Got some stuff pulled out here. Without. Yeah, so that's just kind of clean uppy stuff there. And then let's take a look at the room close mics. Room mics in general are kind of really important to the way that I get drums to sound the way that I do. I like really big explosive room mics. So here, EQ and this vintage compressor, which is the 1176 style. So here's what I've got going on with the EQ. A lot of low cut, a lot of high cut. Big scoop here. That's what I'm taking out, just like ugly frequencies. There's without. There's with. Without the compressor. And then lastly, there's another bit of EQ here. Pulling out some honky stuff here. This area can get kind of nasty in ambient tracks. Got a lot of the low end cut out just because I want to get rid of as much of that kick as possible. Just because sometimes like that can just add a little too much length to a kick, especially when you compress it that hard. And again, more just ugly upper mid stuff that I pulled out there, and cut off a lot of top end here as well, just because I want to get as much cymbal out of there as I can. I want that to add a little bit to the cymbal, like a little ambience, but I don't want the cymbals to be overpowering in that room track, especially considering how hard I'm slamming the compressor. All right, so then we'll move on to the shell ambience track. What this is... This is pretty much just toms and snare, like far room mics. I use this just to add length. I use this kind of in place of a reverb. Here's without it. And here's without the room close mics as well. So here's what I've got going on processing wise. Here, it looks like I moved the compressor before the EQ. Not sure why I did that, but I must have thought it sounded cool at the time. Super slammed on the compressor. Very quick attack, very quick release, because I want this to add just explosiveness here on the EQ. Taking out a lot of low end, some low mid funk here. When you slam these this hard, you can get some really ugly stuff up here from the kind of distortion and the harmonics that are introduced. So I'll pull some out here. Looks like this is all I've got going on here. So take away the compressor. You can hear how much more kind of just like pop that room mic gets to it with that compressor engaged. And then the tube saturation. I really like the stock kind of saturation plugin in Cubase. It sounds really cool. Super subtle, but it is tasty nonetheless. All right, so room mono. What this is just a mono room mic. I use this as a trash mic. Just kind of destroy a compressor. Well, looks like that's not even processed that extreme. Yeah, I don't know. Here's what this adds. I use the room mono to really just kind of add like a little bit of like center cohesiveness to the drums. Just right up the middle because it's mono. And that you can hear here. It's kind of trashy, kind of ratty, so it's mixed in really low. So if I were to take away this drum ambience bus, you'll really notice what all this is adding to the whole thing. So dry. I hate it. The last kind of piece of our drums here that feed to our drum bus is this drum murder track. This is my parallel compression track. So compression, tube saturation, and EQ is what's going on here. And you can see this compressor is just destroyed. See when that snare hits, it just crushes this. Tube saturation totally slammed. Then there's some EQ stuff going on here. I'm going to just solo this because it's mixed in really low. Here's if I take away all the processing. And this is blended in parallel with the drums. Here's what we lose without it. See the drum, it just adds a lot of like punch and aggression and some more weight to the drums. So lastly in our drum chain, we've got this. This is a black valve. I'm going to guess this. I think this one's probably like LA2A-ish, which on my drum bus, I use a Slate distressor plugin, and I have the distressor in that plugin set to behave like an optical compressor, which is similar to the LA2A. So that's why I grabbed this one here. Without it, bring that in. And it looks like I've also got a low shelf boost going on here on the drums. Take that away. Take the compressor away. And that compressor adds a lot. Like that drum bus compression, that little extra bit of glue and cohesion that happens there when you just squeeze that a tiny bit. And I've got this even blended in at 75%, like with the dry wet knob. Slamming a little bit of drive here just to kind of funk it up. Too much, not so great. little tiny bit. Tasty. We'll go ahead and add in our bass now. I'm going to go ahead and disable these inserts that I've got up here on the bass bus, like I did with the drums, and we'll hop down here and see what's going on below. So I've got bass reamp clean, bass reamp filth, and there's also bass DI. You can see that the bass DI, the volume's bottomed out, so I'm not using that because I reamped this before I exported it to mix. So start with our bass clean, and I'm just going to go ahead and solo this bass bus so we'll get just bass tracks for a second. I usually don't mix in solo. I try to mix with stuff in context as much as possible because I want to hear the relationships of what I'm doing versus how it's going to affect everything else. But I feel like for demonstration's sake, it's going to be far easier if I have this soloed so you can hear what's kind of actually going on. So on my bass reamp clean track, if I were to just solo that and bypass everything, here's what I'd have. Here's when I add the EQ. I'm taking about most stuff above 500 hertz. Then scooping out some, I guess this was something that sounded ugly here, and I'm kind of cutting around where I boost on the kick, and then I'm doing a big sub boost. And then hitting a compressor pretty hard because I want this to even out the dynamics. Quick attack, quick release. The whole purpose of this compressor is to even dynamics. And just make the low end consistent throughout the whole thing. All right, so that is bass clean reamp. And then I'll add in the bass filth. So here's what this sounds like alone. Not a super great tone by itself. So if I take away the EQ and the compression, add back the EQ, cutting everything above cutting everything below 500 hertz, taking out some harsh stuff here, cutting out some high junk, then hitting that compressor a little bit more so just as kind of like a volume boost than anything. See, both of these kind of unflattering on their own, but when you combine them, modern metal bass tone. That's kind of the split bass approach where you have a clean signal and a dirty signal. The clean signal fills out the low end, the dirty signal fills out the top end. You can build some really aggressive bass tones like that. You can go a little farther. I mean, some people like have like a mid track, and you can get as crazy with it as you want, but this is just the way I do it. So bass tone. And then up here at the bus, what have I got going on? So up here at the bus, not using any of this stuff, but what I do have is another layer of EQ. I like to, once I've got these summed, I like to hit these with an EQ again, along with the drums. So I'm going to bring the drums back in. Just out this EQ with the EQ brought back in. See, more like this cut here, this cut here. I'm really just trying to keep the bass out of the way of everything else. And just let it fill in the low end. And there's a little grime and some funk up here that I'm keeping in there. And so then lastly on the bass, what I've got here is just a multi-band compressor. And I have this low band on the compressor. Like this is everything 150 hertz and below, which 150 hertz is about where I boost my kick. So everything below there is side chain to the kick. And what this does, you can see here when I kick this back on, see this gain reduction meter. This gain reduction meter is actually being triggered by the kick drum. So what that does is just duck out some sub frequency. I've got super fast attack, super quick release, ducking out a little low end and some sub frequency from the bass every time the kick hits, just to clear a little room for the bottom end of the kick when it hits, right? But I don't want that being engaged all the time. When I'm doing this with third-party plugins, I will use a plugin called Track Spacer here, and I'll just you can side chain it from a source and then select what area of the frequency you want it to do its thing for. Have that hack out some low end from the bass bus every time the kick hits, which I've replicated that here with the stock Cubase plugin, like so. It's a super subtle thing, but it really cleans up the bottom end when the kick hits. And that's just something that I like to do. So that is my bass bus. All right, so we'll add in our guitars now. A few different guitar groups here. You can see these are all just DI tracks. We've got these all just turned down. And there's reamp left and right, which are rhythm. These feed the rhythm sum bus. So you can see here, rhythm sum feeds guitar bus. Then there are some reamp melody guitar tracks. Those feed the melody sum bus, which you can see here. There is in effects send. And this feeds delay and reverb, which feeds guitar bus, also feeds guitar bus here. And then there's a reamp lead, which also goes directly to the guitar bus. There's an effects send here that is bypassed because I wound up actually not using that on the lead guitar part. So we will check out these rhythm guitars. I'm going to mute all of these melody guitars and the lead guitar part. And we're going to look at how I process these rhythm guitars. Opening up our channel strip here. A little bit of compressor. This is the tube compressor. Again, same style of compressor that I used on the mix bus. Here's what I've got going on the EQ, cutting out some low end, also boosting some low end because this is boosting around 200 hertz. Just brings a little bit of oomph to the low end. Then I've got a 1K boost, scooping out some ugly stuff, and then I'm doing quite a heroic high shelf boost up here. If I take this EQ away. Actually, I need to bypass this one as well because that's a lot of top in there. I'm going to take away the compressor. Kind of compressing this a little bit. I used to never compress heavy rhythm guitars, but I've been using this Joel Wanasek bus glue compressor plugin on my guitars, on rhythm guitars, for a little bit. So I was kind of missing some of that little extra squeeze on the rhythm guitars, so I kind of did that here. Pretty straight up, pretty quick attack, quick release, just a little tiny bit of gain reduction just to even out some dynamics a little bit. And then lastly, on the guitar bus, this is a Cubase stock Pultec EQ that actually sounds really good. Bringing in some more top end. I like bright guitars. Sorry. So then we're going to check out our melody guitars, the way I've got them processed. So I'm going to drag this little loop region. So I've got my loop region now set here where these melody guitars are happening. Hop back over to Mix Console. And let's see what I've got going on with these melody guitars. So these are also feeding these effects sends here. First thing I'm going to look at is what kind of processing am I doing on the melody guitars. Compression here, some EQ. And that's it. And then I go over to my delay and reverb tracks, and here's what I've got going on here. Didn't use the EQ here. What I've got is just a stereo delay and a frequency EQ. This is just to clean this up because there's a lot of like resonant, ugly frequencies that'll happen in delays and reverbs. So it's important to clean up those effect sends with an EQ to make sure you're not fighting and taking up space. A lot of the more surgical EQing is about just making space for everything else. So then we'll hop over to the guitar reverb track. Again, didn't use that EQ, but I used this just reverb plugin. Stock Cubase stuff here. Then the clean up the EQ. That's with our melody guitars. And then I'm going to drag this loop region here to where I did a guitar solo in this. Here's the guitar solo. A little bit of compression, some EQ. Here's what I did with the EQ. Cut out some low end, cut out a bunch of low end, some high end, boosted some mids. Well, I need to shorten my loop region, which is fine. And hitting these compressors pretty hard just to kind of even out the dynamics a little bit. Yeah, so then one last little layer of clean up EQ. And then let's see, did I do anything on the guitar bus? Probably not. Yeah, so the guitar bus, kind of left that one alone. Yeah, and then the post-production bus. This is all these different slams and that kind of thing. Didn't really process that a whole lot, just because honestly, I mean, like this stuff has processing baked into it when it's sound designed and printed out. You know what I mean? So that's all already there, so I didn't really mess with that a whole lot, but I'll just play a little example of what all is going on these tracks, just so you can get some context on what I've got going on here. This is just kind of like ear candy stuff, but it's fun. It's fun it's a nice little differentiating thing, just to have that kind of stuff in your tracks. I'll take all that out. I'm going to let it play this section with all the post-production stuff muted, and then I'll go back and I'll play it with the post-production engaged. So let me get back here. Let me engage all this stuff. Little just ear candy, you'll see. Yeah, so just some little spicy stuff there, just to add some texture, some make the transitions hit harder, gives certain parts accents, just that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's how I mixed this little ditty using only Cubase stock plugins. Everything that you see used here plugin wise for processing is all Cubase Pro 13 stock. So I really think, in my opinion, I think Cubase is the king of stock plugins. I'm a recent convert from Studio One. Used Studio One since version 4. I've also, I've got Pro Tools Ultimate. Cubase has the stock plugins that I like the most. Like some of these are going to be like every mixers, like that 1176 compressor. I'm probably gonna start using that on a bunch of stuff. That compressor that I had on the drum bus, I think it was called Black Valve. That one's sick. I like that a lot. The frequency EQ I really like. I like the delay and the reverb plugins. That Paultec is sick. So a lot of really cool stuff included here, just with Cubase. So I think this really turned out good, considering that I'm very spoiled by a very nice plugin library that I've acquired over a very long time. There's some of my third party stuff that I really miss. Like I miss my SSL channel strip. I miss my distressor plugin because I use that a lot for this drum murder bus. That is the distressor plugin. There's some console saturation stuff that I miss that I like a little bit more than what's going on in Cubase. DF Clip 2 from Drumforge is one of my favorites. DF Clarify also from Drumforge. Love those. I've got some mix bus plugins that I really like. But yeah, some of this Cubase stuff is very, very capable. It's really powerful. I mean, you can tell like I did this, and if I heard this, I probably wouldn't believe that it was done with only stock plugins. So that's, it says a lot about the quality of the stuff that Cubase is just including with the DAW. I think their stock plugins are probably the best. So thanks for watching. If you're still with me, for what it's worth, I am a mixing engineer. If you want someone to use a badass library of third-party plugins and make your stuff sound dope, hit me up, jasonbakermixing.com. I would love to chat with you about your next project and help out. Thanks for watching. Later.